Do you know who you're talking to? There are many different factors to take into account when understanding the sociology of your audience. You need to understand that the age is a factor, the audience's gender is a factor, and even the educational and intellectual level of the audience is a factor. By understanding all of these factors, we can get our audience to actively listen to our speeches. Every age group has different beliefs based on their past experiences. An example of this would be an older person who lived through a major event in history would probably be more interested in that event rather than a teenager. We need to understand that different age groups have different interests, goals, and everyday concerns. Teenagers are less likely to be interested in politics and more likely to be interested in video games, and vice versa for the older adult. Another thing to keep in mind is that different age groups process information differently. Teenagers usually need something to keep their attention, whereas an older generation might need to speak at a more moderate pace. The best thing to do when giving your speech is know what age group you're talking to. The next thing to take into account when evaluating your audience is to know their gender. You have to understand that your speech may be viewed differently by men and women. If your tone is confrontational when arguing your point, just know that many of the women in the audience may have tuned out as they prefer a less confrontational tone than men. In understanding the gender of your audience, try not to be stereotypical. Both men and women can be logical and emotional. The best thing to do is to prepare a speech that will be good for both genders. The last thing to take into consideration is the educational and intellectual levels of your audience. We need to be conscious of the educational levels of our audience because the concerns they have could be biased based on these levels. Educated individuals tend to be more interested in issues that are outside their immediate field of operation. The educated person tends to see how these issues relate to their everyday life, whereas the lesser educated person generally doesn't make the connection. We need to choose the topics of our speeches and our words we use during our speech based on the educational and intellectual levels of our audience. All in all, when analyzing the sociology of your audience, just know that there are many factors to take into consideration. You need to focus on the age group of the audience, the gender of the audience, and the educational and intellectual levels of the audience. In understanding these things, you will be able to understand the sociology of your audience and be able to write your speech based on that.